What's going on, everybody? Jeff Holiday here, and today I wanted to make a very quick, very fast, and brief video touching on something that is happening in a couple of days. Now, I would have previously reported on this before, but it's kind of a complicated story. You see, I caught wind of something called the Harlem Vaccine Forum happening over in Harlem sometime in early September, and I realized that ultimately I wasn't going to be able to do much about it because there's no way I could get to New York in that time frame to attend it, because it was going to be held on September 14th. And this is maybe like 4 or 5 days before it was going to happen. But immediately I was like, well, hang on a second. The Harlem Vaccine Forum, that sounds a little bit suspicious, given I have previously seen and am about to detail in very explicit degree how anti-vaxxers have targeted black neighborhoods. So this is a bit troubling. But then also, when I looked at this, I saw some very, very troubling names. First and foremost is Mary Holland, who has attempted and failed to sue for vaccine damages and is a rampant anti-vaxxer. Sheila Ely, it was, I believe, in the movie Vaxxed, and then especially Reverend Dr. Phil Valentine. I know him from watching the Hidden Colors documentaries, the documentaries put out by Tariq Nasheed, in which they claim all sorts of fascinating things like melanin is a neurotransmitter with the sun, and Beethoven was black, things like that. Very interesting stuff. So right away I'm like, and that went into, when I realized who was actually putting this on. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is probably number 2 most notorious anti-vaxxer on the planet right now, just after Andrew Wakefield. And then probably after Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is Del Bigtree. But he's number 2 because he has probably spent more time than anybody else in federal courtrooms trying to explain that vaccines are harming the children, that vaccines are causing autism, and basically spouting off a bunch of crank pseudoscience. More so than anybody else, probably because he's a Kennedy than any other reason, because factually he really has nothing to back up his claims. But I digress. Kennedy is the head of Children's Health Defense, and Children's Health Defense is who is putting on the Harlem Children's Health Forum, which is the now renamed Harlem Vaccine Forum, which they apparently haven't changed all the branding, but it has now been changed to October 19th. 2 days from now, the location to be disclosed. Now, the reason why this got moved is actually an interesting story, and it all comes down to effectively 2 men who are 2 personal heroes of mine, who have been tracking this story quite a bit. The first one is Dr. David Gorski, who, I mean, if you've been paying attention to my channel at all, is an inspiration to me, and I've also referenced his work many, many times, and will continue to do so in the future. But he writes for Respectful Insolence and also Science-Based Medicine. He is a teacher of surgery. I mean, he is at this point so damn good at surgery, he teaches other people how to do surgery. The man is very, very smart and knows what he's talking about and has been fighting anti-vaxxers for decades. And on his blog, he wrote this interesting article, Harlem Vaccine Forum, Is Al Sharpton Anti-Vaccine? Now, the reason why Al Sharpton's getting dragged into this is because Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and his organization decided that they were going to partner up with the Rev Al Sharpton and his specific group, which I believe is an activist group. I can't remember what the name of it is. And they were going to hold this forum. Now, what's interesting is that originally it was going to be held in September, but as Gorski found, it got moved specifically on account of the words from one Curtis Cost, who was a rampant anti-vaxxer, who runs the blog Vaccines Are Dangerous. Go figure that one out. Stated that it was specifically changed to October 19th because Al Sharpton wanted to be there at the same time as Robert F. Kennedy Jr. That was the whole point of it. But that's not how everything turned out. So some of the actions that caused this to change are because of another personal hero of mine, Dr. Peter Hotez. Now, Dr. Hotez is not only a vaccine scientist, as in he helps develop vaccines, but he's also the father of an autistic child. He wrote a book about the experience, Vaccines Did Not Cause Rachel's Autism, in which he very, very specifically details out how vaccines could not have caused his daughter's autism. The man is a champion for this whole situation, so he got involved. I make it a point not to criticize public figures, and with Rev Al Sharpton, it was especially difficult because he's been kind to me and has invited me on his Sirius MSNBC show for Ebola, Zika, etc., but I felt I had to say something. This is not fun. And this is a reference into a Gothamist article in which he had to explain why this is dangerous, this is wrong. Even if somebody's trying to sell this idea to the Rev Al Sharpton that this is just people critical of vaccines, that means anti-vaxxer. A vaccine-critical person is an anti-vaxxer. Full stop. That's just how it is. But because Peter Hotez spoke up, and because significant amounts of pressure were put onto this event, it appears that the Rev Al Sharpton has bowed out of it. The venue has canceled. However, the Harlem Vaccine Forum is still going to occur in 2 days, and they're going to hide wherever it is that they're going to have this forum until the very last moment. Now, I, historically speaking, have always been a big proponent for free speech, and I'd like to think that I still am now, and that this doesn't actually compromise those values as much as some people might think. There's a very specific action being done in the cases of anti-vaccine. You see, freedom of speech is usually weaponized by people who are anti-vax, saying that, well, we need to embrace freedom of speech and we have to equate pro and anti-vaccine as being somehow on the same level, when they are not. They are absolutely not. One has vastly more evidence and vastly more specific scientific rigors behind it that gives it the credibility. So obviously, yes, it should be lent more credence to. So in that way, I feel like freedom of speech is kind of abused by people trying to prop something up as more significant than it is. And in that way, they can obfuscate how much damage it can do. But also, when people announce what a conference is going to be, that it is going to be anti-vax, that they use public pressure on a venue for something that they think is going to be damaging, I do understand the case that you can say that is against freedom of speech, but I also believe that in the interests of public awareness, public knowledge and education, and especially public safety when it comes to those who are the most vulnerable, then making sure that those types of businesses understand exactly what is going to be promoted there is important. Now, I fully support the business to be able to hold that kind of event, but I also absolutely 100% advocate for and encourage people to make sure that if an event like this is going to take place, you let that venue know what it is so that they understand. They understand what they are helping to put out there into the world. That informed consent can only be a good thing, right? That means more speech, not less speech. And so in that same spirit of freedom of speech, I am going to absolutely platform some of the speech that is being put out specifically about the Harlem Vaccine Forum by one Dr. Reverend Phil Valentine on what he thinks forced vaccinations and the vaccination program is. I'm going to allow more speech. I'm going to allow him to explain their position and what they want to bring to the people of Harlem.
Yeah, well, first of all, we do know it is a covert attack because what's being done under the umbrella of protection and security for our health and our children's health especially is actually a covert a type of, I guess, chemical ballistic that is being very covertly inundated into the community in the guise or masked as some form of protection that we would receive, when in fact vaccinations seed diseases. In fact, vaccinations cripple your ability to fight the diseases that you were actually being vaccinated for. So what it does, most people don't know how vaccinations work. First of all, it's got about 65 different types of poisons in it, including the blood of different animals, the genetic material of aborted babies, formaldehyde, what they do to embalm bodies, chemicals such as mercury and aluminum, and all of these types of things that are acting supposedly as what they call adjuvants, which is supposed to activate your so-called immune system.
Right.
But the funny thing about it is there's no such thing as an immune system. That's what we've been conditioned to believe. The very word immune or immunity belongs to the legal department, not to the medical department. So what they're telling you is that you could actually have all types of dietary and life choices that damage your body, but you can actually take this and gain immunity, the way a criminal would then rat on someone for immunity, less a sentence or no death penalty and so forth. Nature doesn't work that way. Nature, no.
Heavy stuff. So hey, I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of what was going to be happening in 2 days in the city of Harlem, whereupon some of the most notorious anti-vaxxers are going to descend into the neighborhood and try and encourage people that in fact it's a chemical ballistic attack that's all in there to try and destroy the immune system, which doesn't exist. Just, so you know. Also, in the same vein, I hope you look forward to this channel having quite a bit more information being put out. I got a big video coming out soon, debunking some vaccine myths that is going to be extremely citation heavy, and a project regarding that I would really like to do in the future as well. Soon we'll be rounding out the very last episode of my Vaxxed, which is good because we've got about 20 days until Vaxxed 2 comes out. And in very specifically in that episode, we will be talking about how the anti-vax cult targets specific racial communities, which is very poignant and very, very similar to what is happening, well, in 2 days. So, yeah, you'll see that there's definitely a pattern when that video comes out. Anyway, from my family dears, I hope you're well. You take care of yourselves. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.